for it to show up on Google first and then start talking. All right. Yeah, looks like we're live on Google. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on November 19th, Kyle Rittenhouse Day for the AAPI GoCast. This is part 2 of our legal podcast bent here. So we have Black Sheep Lawyer with us once again.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure that quite many people are very pleased with the acquittal on all counts for Kyle Rittenhouse. It's going to be a very interesting set of days in the coming weeks as the media sinks its teeth into its analysis. It'll be certainly something very entertaining to watch.
I just want to point out that if you're not happy about this, you've probably been lied to, because if you're angry about a young Hispanic man defending himself from an angry white racist, I mean, I'm not sure what's wrong with you.
Well, speaking of that, I was just listening on it was NPR on the way in, and apparently, like, Brazilian press was under the impression that all the victims were Black, up until it was pointed out to them that no, that's not the case as of today. So they had to issue some corrections in their reporting on the story.
They aren't victims, and I think the judge at the beginning of the case established that you could call them victims if Kyle was found guilty, which he was.
Sure,
they were the assailants, and that's maybe a little bit nitpicky, but
well, let's try to keep the. I would say that it's probably best for erudition's purposes to try and keep the tone down, because I think, although it is a victory essentially for 2A, I think the best way to move forward is to try and to get people who would knee jerk too strongly on the left side to bring them how this analysis came. The verdict was reached, which was, from a lawyer's point of view, it was the correct verdict. From a lawyer's point of view, it was the correct verdict. Because, self-defense, frankly, given all the facts, under a totality of the circumstances, I think actually it was a pretty clear-cut case of self-defense, all around. What I found noteworthy was the deliberation taking that many days, and frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if... it wouldn't surprise me at all if someone said, look, we really need to think about this, just because if we go in there 30 minutes, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and go out, there will probably be even an even more pronounced reaction from those who may not appreciate this verdict. You see?
Yeah, my intuition going in, and I obviously have less experience with juries than you, was that or coming out when the one juror asked if she could take the jury instructions home overnight. My thought then and my thought afterwards, I think that's remained consistent, is that she was the holdout. And considering the tone and the handwriting on the note that was sent, I think she was the foreman and she was holding out. And I think she took the instructions home to read over them once again, and the next day she was comfortable enough to join her fellow jurors in a slew of not guilty verdicts.
Yeah, for full disclosure's sake, I actually haven't sat down and read Wisconsin's statutes relating to first degree reckless homicide. Let's see, what were the other ones? First degree intentional homicide with, of course, deadly weapon enhancements, reckless endangerment.
There are no deadly weapon
safety
enhancements. I believe in Wisconsin they don't do that.
Okay, yeah, and let's see, with regards to the the first degree homicide, attempted use of a deadly weapon. Yeah, I mean, once they probably don't differ too much basically from that of California, because we are talking basically common law here. But for the most part, these statutes are written in such a way such that even if a person arrives at a conclusion that he or she may not like, they're pretty. I mean, they're pretty. I mean, that's the point of statutes, right? They're supposed to be pretty clear cut. The standard here basically is whether or not there was a reasonable doubt, basically, as to guilt. Plus, under the totality of the circumstances of the case, self-defense kind of flashed that flag all over the place. on almost every single one of these counts.
Well, that does raise an interesting question because I've always heard we have the castle doctrine in California, but do we have stand your ground precedent?
Stand your ground is just a lack of duty to retreat, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't know.
Which was actually, in this particular case, for quite a few of the encounters, basically in this particular case, actually, if I recall watching the trial and looking at some of the facts, Kyle was actually running away from.
Mm-hmm.
I think he ran away from, definitely. I can't recall if he ran away from Huber, but from Rosenbaum, he definitely was running away.
He was running away on all 3 occasions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first one, he was running away, turned when he was cornered, which would reasonably satisfy his Wisconsin duty to escape, duty to retreat,
To retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the second 2 incidents, he had been, or for the last 2 incidents, he had been knocked to the ground. So he was trapped. So those 2 really weren't.
Those are more clear cut.
The legal argument, especially with the closing arguments, really came when the entire case hinged on Rosenbaum. And that's what the state tried to do with that drone footage, which there's a whole swath of controversy about it now. But if Rosenbaum was justified, then the other 2 likely were as well. However, if those 2 incidents stemmed from an unlawful homicide, essentially, then there would be a lot more complication to it because, or he would be guilty of the other 2, because he would have lost his right to self-defense by murdering a person.
And that to me seemed to be the reason why the whole shenanigans with the low resolution versus higher resolution drone footage seemed important to me. Just because it was
prosecutorial misconduct all over it. With that, I will have to leave. I have a prior engagement, unfortunately.
Okay,
but
short and sweet.
Kyle's free. Cheers to my man, and I really wish him the best because he's going to have a lot of stuff.
This is not the end of him legally.
Oh, no, he's going to get civil lawsuits.
He is going to get
he's
civil
going to get paid.
lawsuits basically from every single angle.
Oh, absolutely. But he also has a few good ones for him coming up because he has a lot of slander. Libel or slander?
Libel or slander, but I mean, unfortunately, and I can tell you based on experience, libel and slander cases, they really, it's difficult for them to stick. Now, I mean, the thing that he does have against him is that before all of this, he was a nobody, and it's and basically, if you are trying to bring a libel or slander or defamation case, generally, you want to be a nobody.
Yeah, he was not a public figure, didn't ask to become a public figure. I think he has a good, like Nick Sandman. That's the example.
Yeah, the Covington kid, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He got an undisclosed amount in settlements, but rumor has it he's doing pretty well, and I really hope the same thing happens for Kyle because goodness knows that kid's gonna have a hard time finding a job. With that,
let alone attending university.
I think he had probably actually been working as an assistant over at a nursing home, interestingly enough. So I don't know if that job is pretty much. It may be. Who knows? I mean, he may be let go for a cause.
The old boomers might like him.
You never know. Yeah,
right.
Depends
Possible.
On the state.
All right, gentlemen, it's been good for the brief time I've had you, but
okay.
Continue and say hi to Dave if he shows up.
We will. We'll try to keep it to 30 minutes at least. But thanks for showing up, Raph.
All right. Bye, Raph.
I'll
see ya.
I'll ping our other folks in the chat to see if they can show up. Anyone free on Discord? We are live.
Let us see if it is at all possible to get Dave Truslow basically on with us. That would be wonderful.
It would be. Well, I mean, I did have a couple of questions, regarding the video footage. I mean, what do you think was really going on there? Do you think that was an honest mistake or potentially prosecution trying to, I don't know, to me, the low res version of the video, it's harder to tell that Kyle is retreating from Rosenbaum between the 2 cars because you just can't make out the detail. Whereas it's plain as day in the high res drone footage that, yeah, he stopped several times. Rosenbaum followed him across the parking lot, whereas it's just a blur in the low res one. So I would hope that wasn't prosecutorial shenanigans. But
I mean, one could probably even argue with low res that probably even casts further doubt basically on the entire process, as makes the facts blurry. which frankly would typically would have down to the benefit of the strictly academically speaking would have down to the benefit of the defendant. Where there is doubt, the defendant typically in books, they benefit. You see, so I
That's
mean,
true.
I don't want to, necessarily say that the prosecution was involved in shenanigans here. Frankly, I mean, it was a case, if take clinically speaking, looking at the facts, particularly when one removes the backstory of how Kyle got to Kenosha in the first place. You go basically from his arrival to Kenosha and him with his rifle. It's pretty self-defense.
Yeah.
Self-defense, right?
I do have to wonder, though, given your experience with California juries, do you think same case tried here, he may have had a different outcome just given the knee-jerk anti-gun reaction in larger cities? Like say, I don't know, like maybe San Diego or San Bernardino, I would say maybe he'd be fine. But if it were like LA County or another the Bay
You may
Area.
find this pretty interesting, but if I am inclined to believe that with care, a jury too may also find acquit someone similarly situated of similar counts. Frankly, it's. I mean, it is a political issue, but I am inclined to believe that. Yeah, give a prosecutor of same skill or similar skill, as well as a defense attorney or team of defense attorney. Yeah, I wouldn't find it unbelievable that he would have been acquitted, basically, of the charges. I just think the reaction would be particularly stronger on the left over here in California before the trial stage itself. It would have been a little bit more politically charged over here. I mean, as I probably said many times basically before to friends and our colleagues, the practice of law is unfortunately political. It ought not to be, but it is. But there are. I'm inclined to believe that. Through the voir dire process, if you get reasonable people who understand their charge and who understand jury instructions and really understand the words, they practically have no choice. But then you end up basically in a hung jury, and then you're basically back to square one again. So it would not surprise me all that much if in California, if he was found not acquitted, excuse me, of these charges.
Yeah, could definitely see that because I mean, it's California voters on ballot initiatives tend to be like slightly more conservative. Well,
Exactly.
it's weird.
Exactly. This is the state. I mean, for example, California is not just made up of L.A. County, San Francisco County, Santa Clara County, or it's made up also too of. I mean, it's true. This took place in a metropolitan area, but as a whole, the voters in California are more towards the center than I think a lot of people realize. And this also goes for New York, by the way.
Yeah,
So
yeah. If only that could translate to political appointments. That might be a different story.
yes.
Well, great. Well, I guess one thing that's interesting, to get back to the libel angle. Pretty much every anti-gun group has kind of come out and just reiterated the same white supremacy canard. So I've got a couple of quotes here on my phone, which are fun, and I'd love to get your take on libel or not. So here's one from Everytown. Today's Rittenhouse verdict is a representative of exactly what the NRA wants: a society where anyone can have a gun anywhere, no questions asked, and where people feel emboldened to shoot anyone without fear of consequences.
So you'd like my reaction?
Yeah, that's a direct quote from Everytown.
I don't think a cause of action for libel would attach. No, I mean it's an opinion. They're speaking about the NRA. typically defamation suits are usually brought more like by individuals rather than institutions. And frankly, the NRA has been around since I can't remember. It's been quite around. I don't think any, based off of what I hear here, I don't think a defamation suit would attach. Now, if you had basically said that the NRA was involved in criminal activities and was trafficking, I don't even want to say the words. That's totally that's different. And even then, frankly, that would be difficult to make defamation attach. Frankly, let us also remember too that under tort law, you have to prove damages. You have to prove damages, and if you can't prove damages, then basically, why even bother? You see, so I mean that's
That's
another thing to
true.
consider.
That's true. Well, here's a spicier one. This is a gross miscarriage of justice. A white teenager got his hands on a semi automatic rifle and showed up to a demonstration for Black Lives and shot and killed 3 people. He will face the consequences. That one seems a little bit more vague, but I mean, it's kind of like they're implying he's a white supremacist based on my read there.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, from what I can recall, and I've worked on defamation cases before, there are per se categories of defamation that can be pled, but none of those basically were were triggered. Basically, they're, knock on wood, I don't want to use that word, were activated basically, by the quote there. As I recall, the categories include a statement that someone is a criminal when they are not, when implying that someone is or an entity basically is terrible at their job when they are not, um, implying that one has a venereal disease. Obviously, that doesn't apply. So these are pretty specific. And then there's another weirder area in tort law called defamation per quad. So, for example, it could be considered a damaging statement to call a particular non-public person a communist, say, back in, during the Cold War, right?
Mm-hmm.
But today, if you were to say that sort of thing in San Francisco, I mean, who knows? That might even be a compliment.
It
So,
might be.
right? So unfortunately, when people, ask me basically about defamation, I just say, don't bark up the wrong tree. You're just going to be spending a whole lot of legal money. And if you want to pay, I mean, that's perfectly fine, but you're going to have a tough time proving anything. And the more public you are, I don't deal with too many public figures, but the more public you are, the harder it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I wonder. I mean, he's been a public figure for a year now,
Yeah.
essentially, whereas the Covington kid had a shortened reaction, just basically kind of ruined his life in like a pretty short order. Um, I don't know. And I mean, do you think, like, in your mind, the president of the United States or president elect at the time, like, flat out calling him a white supremacist? I don't know. How do you sue the president for defamation?
That was a pretty poor move, unfortunately, on the president's part. First of all, it's legal or not, and I mean, I would not call myself an expert at all by any means, basically in this particular rarefied area of law. But I think there's kind of a custom of, well, frankly, while a trial is going on, keeping mum about it, not making as few comments you possibly can on it, and letting the trial process and letting justice play out. I mean, when the president or an extraordinarily public figure, and how much more public can you possibly be than the president making a comment before before the trial has even cooled down? It frankly is a little bit premature. It's a little bit premature.
Indeed. Well, I guess, since it's only us two, I think we can wrap it this special episode. So we'll call it a day since no one else showed up, but good 20 minutes of discussion here.
Yeah. That's I mean, in closing, I would basically say people have reached out to me and basically said, well, this is the end of Kyle, and all his legal problems. And I say, not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. He has potential causes of action that can be brought against him basically by the families, and frankly, they probably do maybe have some cognizable theories that a lawyer can probably put together. But again, it's that's for each individual attorney. As there are as many opinions about legal matters as there are attorneys. The attorneys each have their own take on a particular set of facts. So, but it's this is not the last that we have seen of Kyle Rittenhouse. I can almost guarantee you that.
Not by a long shot, and not the last you've seen of the AAPI Go cast, but we'll give you back a little bit more time from your evening. Thanks for everyone tuning in live, and we will see you next time. Thanks,
Right.
thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.